The tennis world had been waiting for this. A 21-year-old Filipina, the 2022 Wimbledon champion, center court in Berlin, and a match that absolutely no one could have predicted would unfold the way it did. Elena Rybakina, world number 2, the most powerful grass court force in women's tennis today, was expected to walk onto that court and remind Eala exactly where the line between promise and elite-level belonging was drawn. She had done it before, just weeks earlier in Rome, and she had done it comfortably. But what unfolded on center court at the Rot-Weiss Tennis Club on June 17, 2026, was not a reminder. It was not a lesson. It was not a coronation for the Kazakh champion. It was a revelation. And when the final point was struck, the tennis world sat in stunned, electric silence, trying to process what a 21-year-old from Quezon City had just done to one of the greatest grass court players alive. What exactly did Eala do to the Wimbledon champion that no one saw coming? And how did she prove, beyond any reasonable doubt, that she belongs among the best players in the world? The stage. Berlin, June 17, 2026. The Rot-Weiss Tennis Club's Steffi Graf Stadium was electric from the moment the gates opened. 25,000 fans packed into the historic venue, Philippine flags waving alongside German colors, the chants of "Lean, lean," rolling across the pristine grass in waves. The atmosphere was unlike anything Berlin had produced in years, and it hadn't even begun yet. At the center of it all stood Eala, 21 years old, world number 33, a wild card who had arrived in Berlin carrying the weight of a week's worth of controversy, a Birmingham Open title, and a burning desire to prove every doubter wrong. Across the net stood her mountain, Elena Rybakina, world number 2, the 2022 Wimbledon champion, a player whose game was built, piece by piece, as if specifically engineered for the surface, flat, aggressive ground strokes that skid low and fast off the grass, a serve that had been clocked at 127 miles per hour, and a composure under pressure that had delivered her the sport's most prestigious title 4 years ago. Their recent history was not encouraging for the Filipino. Just weeks earlier at the Italian Open in Rome, Rybakina had controlled their match from start to finish, winning 6-4, 6-3. The scoreline was competitive, but the Wimbledon champion had been in charge of the key moments throughout. Now the circumstances were slightly different. Rybakina had received a first-round bye and arrived in Berlin fresh and fully rested. Alex had progressed via walkover after Donna Vekic withdrew from their opening match, meaning she hadn't played a competitive point since her Birmingham title the previous week, a 5-7, 6-3, 7-5 victory over Nikola Bardankova that had ended a 13-match losing streak against Czech players and announced her arrival on grass in the boldest possible terms. Some wondered whether Alex would be match-sharp enough. Some questioned whether the rust of inactivity would cost her in the critical moments. The crowd expected a battle. The media expected a statement from Rybakina. The tennis establishment expected the world number 2 to reset the natural order of things and remind the young Filipina that the elite level still held secrets she hadn't yet unlocked. But from the very first point of that match, it became clear the expected script had already been abandoned. The first set, a statement written in 34 minutes, the opening serve was a warning. Alex's left-handed delivery fired down the tee, kissing the line before Rybakina could even begin to react. The radar gun flashed 113 miles per hour. The Wimbledon champion, a player who had returned serves from the most powerful hitters in the world, could only watch it whistle past her racket. The message was immediate and unmistakable. This is not the same player you beat in Rome. From that very first game, Alex dictated the terms. Her left-handed angles, the weapon that had troubled opponents throughout her entire grass court campaign, immediately created problems that Rybakina hadn't anticipated. The Kazakh's heavy, penetrating ground strokes, the same shots that had overwhelmed opponents at Wimbledon, were being redirected, pulled wide, stretched completely out of position, and forced into uncharacteristic errors. Rybakina looked uncomfortable. Her movement, typically so smooth and decisive on grass, appeared slightly hesitant. Her timing was fractionally off. The Wimbledon champion, a player defined by relentless aggression and forward intent, was repeatedly being pushed into defensive positions she simply was not used to occupying. In the stands, the Philippine flags waved furiously. The chants built louder with every passing game. The opening game went to Alex, held to love. The next game delivered an even bigger shock. A break of Rybakina's serve in the very first return game of the match. A statement so loud it sent shockwaves through the entire stadium. The 2022 Wimbledon champion, broken by a player ranked outside the top 30, on grass, in Berlin, on center court. Rybakina tried everything. She varied her pace. She attacked the net. She shifted her patterns, hunting for any adjustment that might disrupt what Alex was doing to her. Nothing worked. The Filipino was locked in completely. Focus absolute. Execution precise. She held serve with authority, then broke again, and the set was over before the stadium had fully processed what it was watching. 34 minutes. That was all it took. 6-2. The score sat on the scoreboard like a question nobody in the building knew how to answer. Rybakina had rarely, if ever, lost a set by that margin on grass. And she had never lost one to a player ranked outside the top 20. Alex walked to her chair with an expression that hadn't changed since the first point. No celebration. No visible emotion. Just the calm of someone who had come here with a plan and was executing it exactly as intended. She had seized the opening set in dominant, historic fashion. Now the second set was about to begin. And the question the entire tennis world was suddenly asking was the same one reverberating around that stadium. Could she do it again? The second set, the 119 miles per hour moment. Rybakina came out for the second set, a different player. The world number 2 was not someone who accepted defeat gracefully. She had won Wimbledon without dropping a set in the final. She had beaten the best players in the world on this surface. She had been here before, under pressure in the fire, and she had come out the other side with the trophy. She stepped back to the baseline determined to reset everything. Her serve, one of the most dangerous weapons in the entire sport, had long been her foundation. The tool she returned to in the most critical moments. She leaned on it harder in the second set, hunting for angles and pace that might finally begin to destabilize Alex's rhythm. It wasn't working. Alex broke Rybakina again in the third game of the second set. The stadium erupted. The chants of lean rose to something almost deafening as Philippine flags whipped through the Berlin air. For a moment, it felt like the impossible was not only possible, it was happening, right now, in front of everyone. And then came the moment that will be replayed for years. The toss went up. High. Perfectly controlled. Alex's left arm reached for it as her body coiled and rotated in one fluid motion, loading everything into the strike. Then came the impact, a sound that felt different from anything she had produced before in that match, or arguably in her entire career. The ball exploded off her racket. It screamed through the Berlin air, a white blur barely visible above the grass, skimming the net with millimeters to spare. Rybakina, the world number 2, a player whose reflexes had handled 127 miles per hour serves throughout her career, didn't move. She watched it. She blinked. The ball kissed the inside corner of the service box and skidded away into nothing. The radar gun on the broadcast feed flickered, then locked in. 119 miles per hour. The stadium gasped as one. Not a cheer, a gasp. The collective sharp intake of breath from 25,000 people who had just witnessed something they needed a moment to believe. For context, Alex's average first serve speed hovered around 105 miles per hour. She had never been known as a power server. Her game was built on left-handed angles, tactical intelligence, relentless defensive ability, and the kind of court craft that came from understanding a match more deeply than her opponents. Power was never supposed to be her weapon. But this serve was not 105. It was not 110. It was 119 miles per hour, screaming past the 2022 Wimbledon champion on center court in Berlin, under maximum pressure, in the most important match of her career. The commentators scrambled. Did you see that? 119 miles per hour. That's not just fast for Alex. That's fast for anyone. His co-commentator took a moment before responding. She's never hit that speed before. Not in any recorded match. She just broke her personal record against the Wimbledon champion. Alex walked back to the baseline, bounced the ball. The expression on her face had not changed at all. The history she had just made didn't seem to register with her in the slightest. The next serve came in at 112 miles per hour. Rybakina got her racket on it this time, but the point still went Alex's way. The game continued. She held serve and leveled the second set, but that one moment had already done its damage. Not just on the scoreboard. In the minds of everyone watching. In the mind of Elena Rybakina herself. The Wimbledon champion had faced Serena Williams at her most powerful. She had faced Aryna Sabalenka when the Belarusian was serving bombs in the biggest moments. She had seen elite power. But she had never faced a serve like this, from a player like this, in a moment like this. The match was far from over. But something had shifted permanently in that stadium, and everyone inside it felt it. The numbers. What the scoreboard couldn't fully capture, the match stretched into a deciding third set. The momentum swung. Rybakina's experience and class began to reassert themselves as the match deepened, and the world number 2 pushed harder than anyone had expected, dug in, and found a way through. The final score, 4-6, 6-3, 7-5 to Rybakina. The Wimbledon champion survived. But only just. And the story written in the statistics told a fuller truth than the result column alone. Alex recorded 22 winners to Rybakina's 14. She committed only 11 unforced errors while forcing the Wimbledon champion into 18, nearly double her own. She won an astonishing 78% of her first serve points. She faced just 2 break points across the entire match and saved both of them with clutch serving in the most pressurized moments. The 119 miles per hour serve was the exclamation point of a near-flawless performance. But it was not the only one. Her left-handed angles had repeatedly neutralized Rybakina's power throughout. The Kazakh's heavy ground strokes, shots that had dismantled opponents at Wimbledon, had been consistently redirected, stretched wide, and turned into errors of the kind that Rybakina simply does not usually make. In the end, experience and elite-level depth had been enough for the Wimbledon champion to close it out. But only barely. Only after being stretched to an absolute limit she had not expected to encounter. After the match, words that carried weight when Elena Rybakina was asked about her opponent in the post-match press conference, she didn't hesitate. She played incredible tennis, the world number 2 said. I didn't expect that level from her today. She's going to be a problem for a lot of players. These were not empty words. Rybakina is not a player who offers praise casually. She is measured, precise, and direct. She has beaten the best players in the world and won the sport's greatest title. When she said Eala was going to be a problem for a lot of players, she meant every syllable of it. Alex walked off center court with her head up. She had not won. The scoreboard confirmed that clearly. But she had won something that no scoreboard can fully measure. Proof, undeniable and public, that she belongs at this level. That she can push the Wimbledon champion to the absolute brink on grass. That she can serve at 119 miles per hour under the biggest pressure of her career. That she can outperform one of the 2 or 3 best players in the world across the most critical statistical categories of a match. For months, the tennis establishment had underestimated her in ways that went beyond rankings and seedings. The WTA had advised her to withdraw from Birmingham due to fitness concerns. She had signed a waiver and gone on to win the tournament. They had fined her $50,000. She paid it and kept moving. They had charged her fees that other players weren't asked to pay. She paid those too. They had excluded her from elite player development camps. She trained harder anyway. And now, she had pushed the 2022 Wimbledon champion to 3 sets on grass and forced her to produce the best tennis of her Berlin campaign, just to survive. I'm excited for the challenge, Alex said when asked about what comes next. I know what I need to do differently. I've learned so much from this match, and I'm going to take that into the next tournament. What comes next? The race to Wimbledon, the Berlin Open, was over for Alex. But the grass season was only gathering pace. The Wimbledon seeding cutoff falls on June 22nd, days away. Alex currently sits at world number 33, 1 spot outside the top 32. Compounding the pressure, The 163 points she earned from last year's Eastbourne final expire on that same date, making the next few days among the most consequential of her entire career. She needs a strong run at the Bad Homburg Open to secure her Wimbledon seeding. And Bad Homburg offers more than ranking points. It offers a chance to step onto court alongside Venus Williams in doubles, a pairing that would mark the first time these two remarkable players compete together as a team. The opportunity to share a court with one of the greatest grass court players in the history of the sport at this specific moment in Alex's career could not have arrived at a more meaningful time. The tournament runs from June 21st through June 27th, overlapping directly with the Wimbledon seeding deadline. Every match matters. Every point counts. The window is narrow and the pressure is real. But pressure, by now, is something Eala has learned to wear comfortably. Win or lose in Berlin, seed or no seed at Wimbledon, what happened on center court on June 17, 2026 had already shifted something permanent. A 21-year-old from Quezon City had served at 119 miles per hour against the Wimbledon champion, had recorded more winners than the world number 2, had pushed one of the greatest grass court players alive to the absolute edge of a 3-set match in front of 25,000 roaring fans. The tennis world had come to Berlin expecting Rybakina to remind Eala where the line was. Instead, Eala erased it. Leben always. And Wimbledon is coming.